Yeah, it's 5 o'clock. Let's get started. Thank you for being here. I know everybody's busy and everybody's tired, and there's a lot going on, and tonight's a very important night, and we won't be long. Mr. Alford and a few other people need to slip out. They have other responsibilities at 5:30, so don't feel bad if you need to get up and walk out. We know that there's a lot going on, but again, thank you for being here, and this is Vacation Bible School training meeting, and it is quickly approaching. And I actually was talking to Pastor. He's like, you better do a good job, because this is your first year doing it, and then you're changing it, putting it in the church, and making all these. And I'm like, oh no, it wasn't even my idea, but I'm like, I guess I better own up to it. And yeah, so anyway, there's a lot of things that are different, and I just want to go over the schedule real quick, and then run through the night very quickly, and then Hannah's going to take anyone who has registration duties. I will stay in here with the guides. Brother Alfred normally leads that part of the meeting, but since he's got to step out, I'm going to run through it, and he's just going to remind me if I miss anything. But at 6:30, we're going to have registration, and I will send out an email tomorrow with the schedule, and every guide leader will get one of these. And what we normally do is we have all the information in there, and then when they need to lead their group, for instance, this is the 4-year-old leader guide notebook, and they will hold this high in the air, and all of the 4-year-olds know to follow the person with the 4. They'll have one for the 5-year-old group, the 6-year-old group, and so on. But just so I make sure I don't get anything wrong, at 6:30 we'll start with check-in registration. If you've ever been here for RTTC, we're going to do it pretty much the same way. We're going to have some check-in stands over by the windows as soon as you come into the fellowship hall side. There will be one table, though, for all guests. If you see a kid who has a guest with him, or they tell you that they have a guest, send them to the table. We're going to have it marked, but you never know. They see check-in, they might just go to the check-in stands that they're normally used to going to on a church night. If a kid has been here before, we're going to check him in like it's a regular church service. There's going to be an event in Connect, and we're just going to check him in. If he has a guest, there's a different process. Hannah will go through that. But as soon as they're done, they're going to come in here. We're going to have a bunch of tables in Fellowship Hall 1, 3, and 4. Fellowship Hall Classroom 2 is going to be set up for a classroom later on during lesson time. But in here, there's going to be a bunch of tables. There's going to be coloring sheets, activity papers, and also memory verse sheets. And we have started to transition and do our memory verses for these types of events, the same verses that we use for master clubs, the bronze, silver, and gold. And if you don't know what that is, then it's not important right now. But there are going to be 10 verses for the kids to memorize throughout the week. If they are a 4 or 5-year-old, they have a certain portion to memorize. If they're a 6, 7, or 8-year-old, they have a little bit of a bigger portion to memorize. And if they're a 9 through 12-year-old, they have to memorize the whole thing. That will be clearly marked, and the instructions are on the paper. But if you can be here at 6:30, even if you're not part of registration, that would be beneficial, because at 6:30, kids will start coming in here, and we do need some adults in here. At 7 o'clock, or a few minutes till 7, we will start gathering together by age group, and we will move to the auditorium. That's where we'll have our rally time, where we do songs, announcements. We'll go over our rules, our little pirate code this year. We will go over prizes. We'll have a skit in there each night. The stage will be decorated. A big old pirate ship on the front of the stage. It should be good. But then a few minutes before 7:20, we will dismiss half of the kids to go to lesson time and half of the kids to go to game time. Pray for good weather. We'd like to take them outside and let the sun zap all of their energy before they come back in and have to sit for 20 minutes and listen. But then what will happen is the 6, 7, and 8-year-olds will then switch with the 9 through 12-year-olds. So the kids that were just at game time will go to lesson. The kids that were at lesson time will go to game time. After that, we'll come back and we'll have closing announcements and encourage them to invite their friends. So there are some other specifics in here, but the big thing that I'd like for you guys to do is pray. We have so much going on right now, and the way we do VBS is in the evenings. I know a lot of churches do it in the mornings, and there's pros and cons to both of those things. You don't have to take off of work to be here, but you have to work a whole day before coming here. So there's just a lot of, it's going to be a tiring week, especially for our bus ministry. The bus leaders, captains, drivers will have to take off probably around 5:30, and they won't get back to the property till somewhere around 9:30. And most of them will work all day before that, and they'll do that 4 days in a row. So this is a spiritual endeavor, and we saw 4 kids saved at camp, and it's an amazing thing. We want to praise the Lord for that, but we know that VBS has the potential to see more kids saved than any other event that we do. So we want to pray for the kids that aren't saved to get saved. We want to pray for the kids that are saved to grow, and then we want to pray that God receives glory in everything that we do. Hannah, Brother Alfred, is there anything you think I should mention before we split up? Nothing you know? All right, Hannah, if you want to go to the next classroom. Anyone who's doing registration, I think this is Shaver, the Quinlans, this is Chadwick, this is Solomon, and I don't think Mrs. Barton is here right now. Yeah, please pray for our decorations team as well, because normally by now we'd have half of it decorated at the school building, and because of services we have to wait a lot, and so this is going to be a busy week. All right, everyone in here, do you guys have if you're a guide, do you have one of these? Does anybody need one of these? Has anybody walked in and, Derek, would you hand these out? There's a few people back here. And I have extras if you run out. Okay, so I want to just tell you real quick what is in the binder. And this will, again, only be with one person per age group. And if you have not signed up or you have not received an email from me about serving, if you think that you might not have communicated with me about it, please come let me know, and I'll put your name down and we can get you in the right spot. But we have the Search for Treasure Rock, just theme on the front. We have the age group on the back, and all of the pews will be marked with this same paper right here. So we'll just file into one pew per age group. We're going to use, it's going to be boys versus girls this year. So on one side, 2 sections will be boys, on 2 sections will be girls. So you'll have some overflow. It won't just be one small pew. It could be 2 pews. If we need to, we'll adjust and push it back. But on the front cover right here, you'll have a couple extra coloring sheets that will be in this room. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but you might have a child that struggles to pay attention. And we want all kids to come. We want every single kid to come. It's actually funny, I taught in junior church this morning, and there was a little cute story, and then we read the parable about how Jesus invites everybody to the feast. And we want all kids to come, but there comes a point where distractions happen, and you got to make some adjustments so that all of the kids can learn. And there are coloring sheets in the front, activity papers in the back, and also in this little pouch, there are some fidgets, some little things to play with their hands, nothing loud. And you might think, wow, you're giving them toys to play with while they're in church. Well, if they're there and they're not paying attention, I'd rather them sit and hear something while they're fidgeting with something in their hand and not distract the rest of the group and deal with it later than dig your feet in and tell the kid they either got to stay or they got to go. And oftentimes, if you tell a kid, hey, we got to leave, that's very threatening for them. They feel vulnerable, they get upset, and they start getting loud, and they start taking away attention. So if we can deal with issues discreetly and quietly in the moment, we can always adjust after the lesson. But we don't want to maybe taint the gospel presentation with dealing with a situation maybe in a bad way. This is maybe especially the case for any child that might have some diagnosed ADHD, ADD, learning disability. There's a big range of kids that we'll get at VBS. And so I would encourage you to be positive when you deal with them. Encourage them to sit with you. Say, hey, why don't you sit with me? I got something for you that you can enjoy while the lesson's going on. Maybe even take it to them, show it to them, and then say, hey, why don't you come sit with me? And I know this might be scary. I know this might be uncharted ground for you. But if you're comfortable enough to deal with that situation, jump in there. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. and I'm sure the teachers will, especially. I've taught when there's been kids screaming before, and it's hard. You don't want to stop teaching to address from the front one kid. You just kind of barrel through it. So for the teacher's sake too, please jump in there. But we have some pens, some extra decision cards, some extra Everybody Needs Jesus tracks. They're tracks that a lot of times we use when a kid is interested in getting saved or knowing more about heaven or hell. They look like this. In each classroom, we will have a table in the back that will have these. Brother Alfred reminded me that we also have little Romans Road cards. But if you need help, maybe developing a gospel, learning how to go through the gospel with a child, reach out to me, reach out to Brother Alfred, or I know Brother Jessup would love to work with you on that. But you'll have some extra materials in this binder. The other thing in the binder that you'll see is the nightly schedule. For instance, this is the 4 and 5-year-old one. This has their schedule, and it also has their teachers. For the older groups, you go to a different room each night. On Thursday, we will end up in the auditorium all together, but Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is a different room and a different teacher. That is indicated on your list. Monday is this teacher, this room with this age group. Tuesday is this teacher, this age, or this room, this age group. And then let's just jump into the guide description. What you have in front of you is also in this binder. So if you have any questions, you can go to your lead, your counselor lead, and they should be able to go through this. So let's just quickly run through this. I know there's a couple people that have to leave shortly. Brother Alfred, anything before I get into this that I need to say?
No, but just as a rule, more proactive.
Yes.
We can be with children, the better.
Yes.
Responding, we're already behind.
Yes.
So,
if you see a situation you might think is combustible, jump in there before it explodes, because it's hard to put the pieces back together. And here you have the guide's expectations, if possible. If you work till 6 and you work half an hour away, I know it's going to be really difficult to get here at 6:30. I understand that. But if you can get here at 6:30, that's a great thing. Just helping lead your group to and from each station. It's hard to lead 20 kids anywhere. It's hard to lead 2 kids anywhere, but 20 kids especially. So if you're not the leader, jump in, help the kids stay focused, keep their head tight line, keep their heads forward, things like that. Staying aware of safety and discipline problems within your group, and then counseling children after lesson times. We'll get into all those things. We have some emergency contacts. Myself, Brother Alfred, and Hannah are in there for some of the beginning things of the night. And then the bus captains are in there as well. Brother Barclay, Deanne Siegbert, and Sharon Ortez. I put Mrs. Ortez's number down because Brother Ortez is teaching one of the lessons this week. And so you don't want to deal with a Loveland bus route problem in the middle of his lesson, obviously, so you can reach out to Mrs. Ortez. Sorry, I keep saying Ortiz, it's Ortez. I know that. You got the schedule there. Discipline and safety. Please do your best to keep children in lines while going from station to station to better keep track of each child. The lead guide should lead each group, holding up their binder with the age number to see, while other guides keep kids in line and bring up the rear. Please do your best to limit bathroom stops. You will have a large group, so if a child absolutely needs to use the restroom, do it quietly and discreetly so as not to encourage others to do so. Always have 2 people take a children to the restroom. Do not take, if you're a man, please don't take a girl to the restroom. If you're a lady, please don't take a boy to the restroom. And please go with 2 of you, especially with an outreach event. There's no need to have any kind of situation go awry. If you must go into the bathroom for any reason, make sure the other guide has the door propped open and can see the situation. This should be far and few between. I don't even expect this to happen for VBS, but never go into the bathroom when a child's in there unless you're accountable. If there is a child causing a disturbance, there are 3 steps to correction. Verbal warning to fix behavior. Encourage them to behave for the sake of participating in events. Please spin everything positively. Don't project to a kid that he's a bad kid. Don't project to a kid that he's not doing something the right way. Say, hey, why don't you pay attention? And God really wants you to learn something. And if you pay attention, you might be able to answer a question later, earn prizes for or points for your team, things like that. The second step is to move a child to the back of the group or room. Warn them that they have to leave and cannot participate in events. And then the third one is report the child's name to a registration team leader for parents to be called. A child cannot stay if they have to be physically handled to be safe or stay in a room or building. Moreover, if the child causing issues is a bus rider, they will have a wristband, red for Milford, green for Goshen, and blue for Loveland. Your first point of contact should be their bus leader. They will be ready to contact parents and deal with the child appropriately. They should have all of that parent contact information. We should have no physical contact with the kids beyond a high five or a fist bump. The only exception is if that child is a hazard to themselves or others. We just, we just mentioned that. If a child comes up and hugs you, there's nothing you can really do about it. They have like vice grips for arms and hands, and just try to blade yourself a little bit, pat them on the head or the shoulder. Don't embrace them, pick them up, sit them on your lap, those types of things. More and more we see children that range in autism and learning disabilities. If you have a child in your group that may be distracting the rest of the group, please encourage them to sit with you during the lesson time, and you might be able even to tell that before you get there. You can dictate where you sit, maybe closer to the back, and color another coloring page or listen to you with a fidget. And the binders have those things. If you run out, please come to me. I should be able to get you more things. Memory verses. One way kids earn team points is to memorize Bible verses. We will be using the first 10 silver verses from our Master Club's curriculum. The verse sheets indicate what portion. We already went through that. Each group has a specific color that you're just working for. Each verse, that's in quotes, each one has a reference, teaching, and verse. So it's like, Matthew, whatever, the teaching is love Jesus, and then the verse is this. For the younger kids, I think the 4 and 5-year-olds have to memorize the reference and the teaching, and then 6, 7, and 8-year-olds have to start memorizing the verse, and all the older kids have to memorize the whole thing. If a child is new or they struggle with memorizing verses, please give grace by helping once or twice. The goal is memorization, not points, but we don't want to discourage kids. If you're so strict that they can't memorize a verse, they're not going to want to memorize any other verses. So there's a balance there, and we just trust you to strike that balance. Starting at 6:30 each night, there will be tables in here, and you can come in here and sit at a table and listen to the kids quote verses and talk to them while they're coloring and things like that. For each correctly quoted verse, you may check the box next to that verse and give them one gold piece. That is not accurate anymore because I got them in the mail and they are so tiny and not even worth it. So we have, it's a pirate theme, so we have jewels for them now. And if they or if they say a verse, you can give them a jewel. And each team has a treasure box that they're trying to fill up each night. The heaviest one will be weighed and win points for their team. If they bring a visitor, they'll get a gold bar at check-in. And so we emphasize guests over Bible memorization for this event strictly because it's an outreach event. For instance, Master Clubs is totally flip-flopped. But they'll get those things and they'll be able to throw them into the treasure chest, and each night they'll get to weigh those things once we get in the auditorium. So each one can get a jewel when they memorize a verse. If they memorize all of the verses, they have check marks next to each one. They can say all 10 verses in a row once you give them the reference, and if they say all 10 of them in a row, they can go get a gold bar to put in their treasure chest. So again, you might want to go over this a little bit, or have maybe this sheet right here with you when you come in, and then you can, if you forget what happens, you can just double check here. For game time, we will have either both inflatables in the Gorilla Ball pit outside or an organized game. Game time will be near or under the pavilion if the weather is nice. If not, it'll probably be either under the pavilion if it's not too bad, or in 5 and 6. That's our last case scenario. They will be organized, but that doesn't mean that we want you to just stand there and take that breather. I know it's a long night, but if you can, please participate in the games or be active with them and continue to build those relationships. And here's the big one. I know I gotta go fast, Mr. Alfred. Counseling. We desire spirit-led decisions. The point of the lesson is to present God's word and provide the Holy Spirit opportunity to work. The point of counseling is to respond to a child's response to God. Please do not force a salvation prayer and deal with the child on a subject they respond to the lesson about. If they come back because their cat died and they want prayer, please don't bully them or push them into a salvation decision. Deal with them with what God has dealt with them on. You can basically lead any child to make a decision that you want them to, if you ask the right questions and you're bold enough. And we want these obviously to be genuine decisions. So at the end of the lesson, beginning of the invitation, we would like the counselors who are comfortable enough to go to the back and to get supplies ready. There'll be hopefully clipboards there with a track, a decision card, and a Romans road all in there with a pen. We would like, we would like one guide, and it could be the lead guide, it could be somebody else, to stand in the back, and the teachers are going to direct them to that person. And very quietly, if you would, ask them, what did you come back for? And if they say, well, I got saved once, and I'm not sure if I'm saved anymore because I'm not baptized or whatever it is, send them to one counselor. If they say, I want to know more about going to heaven, I don't want to go to hell, send them to one counselor. If they say, my cat died and I'm sad about it, send them to a counselor, but we want them to get more than one child. We only have maybe 6 to 8 counselors per room at the max. And so if 10 kids come back, we don't have enough counselors to deal one-on-one. And if you've ever led someone to the Lord, you know it's best and easiest if it's one-on-one. So if we can kind of weed out the prayer request counseling to be dealt with maybe 2, 3, 4 kids at a time and pray with all of those kids, that would help the salvation counseling be more one-on-one. Obviously, we don't want to spend 10 minutes dealing with kids getting split up. So that does need to be quick. But if a child responds with salvation or assurance, please give them one person. No matter how many people you are counseling, stay near the group and avoid shutting doors if at all possible. When counseling, try to make sure that ladies counsel ladies and men counsel men or boys. Be thorough with each person, but keep in mind your time limit is only about 10 minutes before you really will start getting distractions hitting the kids. When counseling children about salvation, try to avoid asking yes-type questions. Ask questions that require a sentence or two in response. A good place to start is asking them, why did you come back here? Or what would you like to pray about? If they can't articulate, it might just be an emotional thing, but you just kind of can feel out where they're at. After Monday, it's a good idea to check with them if they have already made decisions. If you have dealt with a kid on Monday, it'd be good if you can try to deal with the kid on Tuesday or Wednesday. You might have a child who doesn't really fully understand what the Bible says, get saved on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you really want to be able to hammer assurance down with them. And you might talk to a kid, they might think they got saved, and there's just all sorts of things. So if you can deal with the same child, it is beneficial. If a child is sure they would like to talk about salvation, heaven, being a Christian, a good place to start is everyone's sinful condition. Include yourself in that. Say, I'm a sinner. Pastor Detry's a sinner. The person who taught the lesson today is a sinner. Everybody is a sinner. Here's the thing. If a child can't understand that they're a sinner or won't admit that they're a sinner, they're most likely too immature or not ready to be saved. And so the counseling should probably stop there. You pray with them and hope for more spirit conviction the next day. Brother Alfred, before you leave, should I mention anything you wrote down? Just keep going.
No, but the counseling is the most important part, obviously, and the greatest opportunity in being a guide. It's not getting them from A to B. It's that every night, the opportunity to build a relationship and see them through the week, and as they're struggling, and be able to, as Brother said, to me, that's what I love the most about the way that the church does that with counseling.
And Brother Ketchum thank you, Brother Alfred. Brother Ketchum is leading the oldest group because he's in a month going to get them into the youth group. We try to keep you paired with the group that you're going to get, if at all possible. I just want to make sure I got all my notes right here. Let's see here. Let's see here. That note right there, it is important that the child realizes their sinful condition and their need for a Savior. If they cannot understand or admit this, then they should not be led any further. If the child, the bullet point there, says yes to the question of whether they have done wrong, then you should continue presenting that plan of salvation. Children might need definitions, wages, sin, everlasting, things like that. If a child resists praying by themselves because of fear or uncertainty, be patient. Suggest that all they have to say to get started is, Dear Jesus, and then whatever is on their hearts, bow your head, give them a second or so to get started. Most of the time, that's all they need. If you help them get started, they do the rest. And I know that you might be excited or nervous to lead them through a prayer, but my wife actually got to lead a little girl to the Lord last Sunday, and she said the cutest little prayer. And it's the most authentic thing when a kid is not given the words to say, but then they just speak from the heart and talk to God. And we miss that sometimes when we're a little too eager to lead them through a prayer. If they are still too afraid, though, then of course help them through the sinner's prayer, but don't pray for them and stress the person to whom they are praying. After they pray, ask them to whom they prayed, and if they really meant what they prayed, then reassure them that if they really meant what they prayed, then they are now a child of God. Assurance is a very big thing for Vacation Bible School. We might not see these kids ever again, and what we don't want them we don't want them to associate being saved with Vacation Bible School or being saved with that emotional decision. We want them to understand that salvation is not a process that we do. It is something that God does for us, and all we have to do is accept it. And once that happens, it's for good, and you cannot break that if you're bad enough, or if you don't go to church again or anything like that. So we want to stress to them assurance. After you've gone through this assurance, encourage them to keep coming to church, come back the next night, talk about baptism, read their Bible and pray every day, and obey their teachers, their parents, things like that. Please fill out a decision card and remember to sign your name. That's very helpful, because if Cordia led a little girl to the Lord and we don't know that, there's a lot of volunteers to go through, and I might not know who to ask about what that process was like. And then please give that to Hannah, someone at registration, or my wife or I, and we'll make sure that those get dealt with. And by the way, we do not want to be greedy with follow-ups. If you led a child to the Lord and you want to follow up with them, that's fantastic. You want to talk to them about baptism and coming to church, you want to visit them at their home, that's great. I don't want to steal that from you, but I also want to make sure that it gets done as well. A couple helpful reminders. Please leave your station 5 minutes before the next activity begins. Doing VBS in the church will make stations a little further apart than normal, so make sure to give yourself time to get to your station before your next activity begins. We will begin closing at 8:20 sharp, so please don't be late. Obviously, if you're dealing with a child about salvation, take as much time as you need. Prepare spiritually for this week. God wants to move, and Satan wants to limit spiritual progress. This is an intense, long week. If you're not spiritually prepared, it is likely you will not be physically or mentally prepared either. And every interaction that you have at VBS is an opportunity from God to extend His love and grace to these kids. And oftentimes, He does use us to show that to them. So, I said a lot, and I said it fast. Are there any questions? Yes, Brother Justin.
Hey, one more comment about leading a child to Christ, which a number of people who have little experience or no experience can obviously be very intimidated by. We have archived on our Loving and Leading Conference website a complete 50-minute video that trains you how to lead a child to Christ. I encourage you. It's free to look at, to review. Lovingandleading.org. Lovingandleading.org. And you go on there, you look at the archived videos, there's a lot to choose from. But look at the one about leading a child to Christ. It is extremely helpful. Extremely helpful.
I'm going to say that again. I'm recording this for any of the guys who aren't here. But if you are interested in learning more about how to lead a child to the Lord, or you think you need some brush-ups or some tips, lovingandleading.org has a session, a 50-minute session that goes through all of that. That's a good tip. Anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns? You want to quit? Anything like that? We do need a few more people. It's not terrible right now, but we do have just a few more spots that can be filled. So if you know of anybody that is kind of on the fence or isn't here, encourage them to text or call or email me, and we can get them plugged in. Kids ministry can be very daunting if you haven't done it before, but I mean, I've told kids that Paul walked on water, and they forgave me and sat there and listened to me teach for another 10 minutes. So then there's that one time I was at regionals with Brother Jessup, and for one reason or another, I had to take Benadryl and then lead a quizzing match, and I about fell asleep. So, but they're so forgiving. It's fun. Anybody else? Last chance. Yes, Mrs.
Do you
Mounts.
have a breakdown of what groups we're in or who we're with?
Yes, I will send that out this week. And I believe I've talked to all of the lead guides. Please forgive me if I say something along the lines of, thank you for leading this group, or, I think I talked to you about it. Please don't get offended. I am so jumbled right now that I might have talked to you in my sleep. So I think I've talked to all the lead guides for your age group, but I will send out a list of who's in what age group and the nightly schedule this week. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I may have asked you this question before. On the permission forms for kids, like for the bus ministry, we have permission forms for all the children that ride the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have to do a separate one if they're coming to Vacation Bible School?
No, actually, I think we mentioned that briefly. New riders do, but if they have already signed a permission form to come to church and ride our bus, they do not need to sign a new one for this event, which will, yes, that will help tremendously. Anybody else? You guys are great. All right, if you have questions, please feel free to come to me. This is basically all I'm going to be doing this week, so my mind's on it, and I appreciate you guys coming, and have a great rest of the evening.